Hello, welcome to Docue Digest, the podcast where usually we break down legal topics into bite-sized pieces. However, this is series 2, and we're doing things a little bit differently this series. So I'm Ashleigh Evans, I'm a senior legal counsel for Docue UK, and this series I'll be interviewing some amazing entrepreneurs. I'll be finding out about their founder journeys, their biggest lessons, and also what their top tips are for growing and scaling their business. So in this first episode, we have Marley Ryder. Marley is the founder of a dental tech innovator called Guider Dental. He's got an amazing product, and I'm super excited to find out how he started Guider and how he built it to where it is today. So without further ado, Marley, great to have you on board. How are you? Tell me a bit about Guider.
Hi Ash, thanks for having me. So I'm Marley. I started Guider Dental 3 years ago now. It's a dental technology company that focuses on guided surgery, helping dentists with their implant placement. So what we do is we plan that on the screen, then we produce a surgical guide, which is 3D printed, and it makes their implant placement more accurate, precise.
Okay, so if I were to go to the dentist and I needed to get some kind of tooth replacement, then my dentist would reach out to you. What would they do, like send a picture of my mouth to you?
Yeah, so it's all done digitally. So what we do is our customers are dentists, so we're not to customers, we're B2B. But the technology is really driving the industry now, and that's kind of why I started the company.
Nice. And what inspired you to start a dental tech business? I can't imagine when you were a child, you turned to your mum and you were like, Mum.
No, I wanted to be an astronaut. When I worked for a dental company for 6 years, and then I enjoyed it. But it was a complicated business, and I kind of saw an opportunity in the market. People weren't focusing solely on this, but we were getting asked a lot about it. We kind of had to, in the end, turn people away. So I thought that you could do that just as a sole business instead of kind of fully serviced dental laboratory, which is what my old company was.
How did you know that this idea would work going out on your own? Was that a pretty huge risk for you to take?
I didn't, but that's kind of part of the process. You know, you have to take these risks.
So how did you get your first customers when you started then?
So that was basically built on my network. So I created a relationship with dentists throughout working at my previous job. And I'd spoken to them about, well, I actually used to provide the guided planning service myself. I ended up doing that on my own for the company. I was still an employee. I just noticed that there was kind of a gap in the market. And I kind of reached out to my network and said, is this a product you'd be interested in? Which I knew it was because they were already using the service. They said yes. And now we've got around 150 dentists, but majoritively it's been word of mouth, really.
Wow. And so you said you use a 3D printer, and I assume some sort of software as well for creating the molding from the picture. So how did you fund that in the beginning? I know nothing about 3D printers, I'll be honest, but I'm assuming they're not cheap.
They're expensive, yeah. So I funded it initially through the government. So I got a government startup loan. I looked at investment options, but that meant that I could kind of be 100% shareholder. I'm not too worried about the equity. It's more about the decision-making side of things. And then, yeah, so I applied through the government, sent them a business plan, spoke to their employees, and ended up getting approved. So that was how we initially got funded.
How much was the initial funding from the government loan?
It was 25,000 was the initial loan, and then I had some savings as well.
Wow, okay. And what do the terms look like? Sorry, that's a really lawyery thing of me to initially think about, but how do you go about paying that back?
So it's an interest loan, and we pay it every month. I think it was over 6 years, and the terms were kind of set out initially from them. Nice,
okay. And so after you started Guider, when did you start to see a return that you could comfortably pay off that loan?
It took a while. So for the first year, we made a loss, actually. And to be honest, I was at zero. I had, credit card debt built up. So I went to the bottom. But then year 2, we started to make a profit. And now we're kind of prosperous. I've got the money to take on employees, etc.
Nice. So you said you went to the bottom there, but yeah, people say that when... Okay. But they say when you hit rock bottom, that's when you learn your most valuable lessons. So what would you say was the most valuable lesson that you learned from that?
Well, it's a good question, actually. you really have to kind of rely on the self-belief and believe that it will eventually turn out okay. It's not a nice feeling, but you have to have faith in the product and the decisions you made, and it ended up paying off.
So when did you start to bring on employees then? I assume it's after you've hit bottom, and then when things are starting to become profitable, then you can afford to bring on more people and scale.
Exactly, yeah. So I employed my first employee 6 months ago, and you kind of know when it's time, just you get insanely busy working weekends, nights. So that was the moment I knew. And then, it's been 6 months from now, and I've got another employee starting in January. And to be honest, I'm going to have to employ someone else pretty shortly after that, I believe.
Oh, congratulations. That's amazing. So you've gone from being a one-man band to bringing on potentially 3 employees in Q1 of 2025.
That's true.
Amazing. And how do you know what to do as a first-time employer?
Well, I didn't really, and this is why we're on the call. So Docue helped me out massively there, really. So they've got all the contracts ready to go, and I also joined the employee webinar, which helped me not only with the legal side of things, but it helped me with kind of operational. It was just every step of the way. So that was really helpful. And I'm not a lawyer. The cost of using Docue is so much cheaper than actually having to hire a lawyer. And I did it all myself using the online portal. It's all easy. All the documents are stored there, and there's an e-signature function as well.
Oh, good. I'm glad I didn't even have to prompt you to to pick up Docue. That's amazing. And I'm glad you enjoyed that webinar, actually. That was one of our first webinars that we put on. We were just kind of testing the waters to see if anybody would join. We teamed up with a great company, HR specialist called Talent Tent, to put that on. And did you kind of just use it as a checklist then to tick off what you needed to do to bring on your first employee?
Yes, so I didn't really know what I was doing at the start. So there's a lot that goes into it. PAYE, you need to register. There's also insurance things. You have to have insurance when you first bring on your first employee. Sorry. So all these things I didn't know. So it's really helpful for that. And then you kind of get more familiar with it as the process goes on. But that was helpful for me initially.
Nice. And it must be a bit of a change for you to originally be going into an office just yourself every day, and now you've got new people there. Do you feel like you've had to expand on your communication?
Yeah, so I've had to be a lot more conscious of how I'm behaving to a certain extent, because obviously I'm responsible. I've got to lead a team now, so I've got to set an example. Before, I used to work hard, but I wasn't fully conscious on how I was acting and how that was affecting the team. But now I'm fully aware of how my kind of behaviours affect my employee and the culture of the company. We're very small, but these are things that I do think about.
Yeah, and I guess even though you've got employees now, as a founder, it's always going to be isolating to a degree.
Yes, it is isolating, I have to say. Well, I have a mentor actually, which helps me make big decisions.
How did you find your mentor? How does that relationship kind of kickstart?
It's actually my mum's boyfriend, so there was nothing I could have done.
So he forced the mentorship upon you.
So I've got no advice for anyone there. But he's an investor. We were looking at investment opportunities, but I'm just at the moment growing the business organic. But he's very experienced, and to be honest, I haven't made a decision without consulting him.
Oh, amazing. So you'd say a top tip of yours is have a mentor and kind of use them to guide you as you're starting off?
100%. I really think you need a mentor at every stage, and I've heard that from people that are in the hundreds of £1 million companies. You really need someone to that's already done it. That as an entrepreneur, you're always doing new things. That's just kind of the nature of it. So people that have already experienced that, ideally, you want someone that's already made those mistakes, so they can kind of guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, and I guess over 3 years, you've probably made some mistakes and learned from them. What do you think is the biggest mistake that you made over these 3 years, and how did you overcome it?
I'm always making mistakes, but the biggest one was my first employee. So I kind of made a decision. He wasn't a good cultural fit, but I didn't understand that when I was employing him. I just kind of liked him as a person. He was a really nice guy, but he just didn't fit the business culturally. So I ended up having to let him go. So that was a big mistake. It's never nice to let someone go, especially that early.
Of course. And I guess the company's your baby, right?
Yeah, teenager now, I'd say.
How do you feel about releasing the reins a little bit whilst bringing on new employees?
Oh, I'm all game for it. I want the business to kind of be its own living, breathing ecosystem, organism. But it's just going to take a while to get there. It's quite an esoteric industry, or especially what I'm doing. So I have to train pretty much everyone up from scratch, which takes time. But it's kind of the nature of a startup, especially a startup that's in an industry that's kind of new.
Yeah. And you mentioned that cultural fit now is an important thing on your checklist when you're employing people.
100%.
What would you say Guider Dental's culture is? Have you started building this?
We have, yeah. So we're very technology focused, as you have to be. It's all about precision. We're working to microns of accuracy with every guide we produce. Also, customer service is at the heart of it. I don't see my customers I have like a personal relationship with, all of them different as well. You have to treat them all differently. But it's not transactional for me. Things like if a guide doesn't fit or go wrong, it's like a full refund. We don't try and kind of eke out any money. It's just building that personal relationship. And it just needs to be like a sustainable business, really, so that all of us can prosper, clients, employees, the company.
Is there a particular resource that you've learnt this from?
Yeah, so there's lots, really. There's kind of three main ones, maybe. So the Lean Startup by Eric Ries, which is all about having a minimal viable product, iterating the product, using kind of the build, measure, learn technique. Because really you don't know what the product's going to be until you start doing it. So it's that methodology, and that iterating and kind of building a better service has been kind of fundamental to the company. And then there's an author called Patrick Lencioni. I don't know if I'm getting these pronunciations right, but he does like fables with lessons in them. So there's one called Getting Naked, which is about being honest with your customers and how you treat them. And there's one called The Motive, which is about lessons about being a leader, as far as where the responsibility lies and where your focus is. Basically saying don't be selfish. I think a lot of people get into business to kind of benefit themselves, which is a product of it. But really, the way you're successful is to care about your team and really pay attention to the people around you, not yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of dialogue, I think, at the moment about what it takes to be a good leader. Do you think this is something that's innate, or do you think it's learned on the job? What do you think makes a good leader?
I kind of want to say it's innate, but I don't think it is. I think a good leader is someone that understands the people they're leading. So everyone kind of requires a different management technique to a certain extent. Some people may be motivated by money. Some people may be motivated by kind of lifestyle. And it's quite important to kind of it's hard, but you have to try and figure out what motivates people early. And then that's kind of how you can manage them according to that. Do you know what I mean? So also, it's just a personal relationship. We're not friends, but we spend a lot more time than I do with my friends. So, you have to make sure you're on the same page, you like each other, and you're kind of paying attention to how they feel and how they're getting on.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you're looking after your employees. And I guess if you're bringing on more next year, then this is something that you're going to have to think about more and more.
Yeah, I'm trying.
What do you think is next for Guider? What's on the list of goals for 2025?
So I just know that I want the business to grow at a sustainable rate, build a team, mainly build resilience, because I still am a bottleneck in the company at the moment.
Why? Why do you think you're a bottleneck in the company?
Because of my skill set. It's just I've had to learn a million things, and I know the way I want to do it. I haven't transferred those skills over yet. So if I was to get hit by a bus, that would mean that the company would not be in a good position currently. So I need to build that resilient skills transfer whilst keeping it sustainable, so people can go away on holiday, no sweat, all these kind of things.
So is that something that's in your plan for 2025 then? Get more training, try and offset your skills?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to push sales next year, but mainly it's just building the team now.
Nice. And if you could go back to Marley 3 years ago, day one, what advice would you give him?
Keep on going, because it's a real roller coaster. You have to be thoughtful in the decision making, but really you just kind of learn as you go along to a certain extent. So it's about having the right attitude, not being too attached to the results you can't be too attached to the company. You just keep going, because things will fall into place eventually.
I feel like this can help anybody, whether you're an entrepreneur or not.
Exactly. Yeah, well, people think business is kind of some special thing, but it really isn't. It's not. It's just relationships with people, providing a service or product that people actually want. But it's same to, your relationships with anyone in life. It's part of being a human.
Yeah, I love it. Well, look, Marley Ryder of Guided Dental, thank you so much for coming on and kicking off Series 2 with a bang.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.